I've had a little bit of a developing opinion on the Patriots starting last Friday, and it's carrying on through today. So this week, I'm just sort of working on a developing opinion. Do you know what it is?
What is it?
Their roster stinks. I know it's so stupid. Like I forgot it, or I have ignored it, or I was expecting more, or I don't know. That's just today. Okay, that's my temperature today this week. It all just sort of started with the offensive line shuffling last week, with Ben Brown at left guard and this Bradbury at center who blows, and Phil Perry reporting that if he were Mike Vrabel, he'd call an emergency meeting right now, and we got to figure out left guard and center. And that was 3-4 weeks into training camp, and now you're back where you started from with Ben Brown in the starting lineup and Alex Barth saying, well, they picked up starters at the last day of training camp last year from the street. Like, that's a good thing. I said, no, Barthy, that's a bad thing. And so it's like, it took me a while to occur. They're back to square one on the offensive line, meaning it blows. And they're just sort of casting about on the offensive line, throwing fishing lines in the water, trying to figure out what to do up front when they had all offseason to figure it out. And that is very frustrating to me. And then you look just beyond that at receiver. No one's emerged other than Efton Chisholm, who's going to be your 6th or 7th guy. Mm-hmm. Douglas has shown flashes, I guess, but he's a third receiver at best. Diggs might be ready to go, might not. It's kind of hard to know.
Matt Collins has looked okay.
4th or 5th guy at best. And the rookie's already out. Okay, the backup quarterback got him killed. Not really his fault. But he's already out. And I look at it, I go, the roster, and no one's emerged. The only guy who is going to be a factor among the starters to begin the year is the running back. And you know how I feel about that.
Correct.
So if your running back's your best player, or the running back or the player that's popping is your running back, you suck.
So you like the player, but the position has minimal value.
I have just a bias against the position. Now, look, if I'm going to have an impact running back, be a guy that plays in space and is in the passing game. And Henderson's just the kind of guy that I would want if I were going to have a running back. So, like, I'm not saying anything bad about him at all. I love him. I love his blitz pickup and his pass protection. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, he can block.
He's great. Great pickup there. Should be a real factor in the offense. I'm not saying anything. And I love the profile of guys like Efton Chisholm and Pop Douglas. I love volume, slot, pass catching, move the chain guys. I love those guys. But only if there's bigger, faster, more impactful talent around them. When those are your number one guys, it's trouble. So and then now add on that it looks like, other than Drake May, who hasn't exactly set the world on fire himself, the entire 2024 draft class is gone.
Correct.
They basically, after May, went over.
Kicked out of school.
At the draft. And it's like, the context of that is don't lose that. These drafts are so important. They're starting from the bottom. They're picking at the top of the draft. They have to start drafting well. They have to start hitting on guys. They have to. You just can't build it through free agency. It's got to, the DNA of it has to start with your drafted and developed talent. And last year, you're sitting at the effing top of the draft. And it was a good draft. Not like this last spring, which was a bad draft. That was a good draft last year. And you're going to walk away with one player who's might not even be, and I'm talking about Drake May, ready to really elevate you like you need him to in the first place. Mm-hmm. So this is all sort of added up. It's like I'm still expecting them to be decent. I'm not changing my expectations because when you draft that high, you have that much money to spend, and you have a good quarterback, right? And a good coach and a horrible schedule, that to me equates to middle of the pack just of itself. I'm not letting him off the hook for that. You should have no lower expectation than middle of the pack. 8-9 wins, that's where they should be. That's where I'm still at. But boy, their roster, I was expecting more by this point in training camp for a handful of guys to emerge. And say, well, they're really working with something now with this receiver group. And boy, if Will Campbell looked better, I'd say, all right, they got a franchise left guy, and that's something to start with. But in pass protection, he's really hit or miss. And it's like the roster still blows. So, sorry, developing opinion, you've all been there earlier than me, but I'm usually late to these things.
Yeah, no, they're not. I mean, again, the roster, I think the offensive line to me is a tipping point. And so, and again, I don't know whether you feel the same way or not. I understand.
Yes.
I understand what you're saying about the receiving core, but I will also say, I think there is a chance. Like, I think the receiving core has shown a couple of small signs. Diggs has had a reasonably good preseason. He hasn't played in the games, but he's practiced. He's healthy. I think he's participating. We don't know if he's going to start the year, but he's actually looked pretty good in those occasions he's been on the field.
Same with Kyle Williams, who's getting separation, gets open. It's just that anytime he's out there, the quarterback's throwing behind him or high or getting him decapitated. So he's flashed a little, just no one could get the ball to him.
But the O-line to me is a tipping point, and I think that's why this weekend was so hurtful, this past weekend. That game, when they all of a sudden started playing musical chairs on the offensive line, the message was, uh-oh, we don't have answers here.
They don't have guys at guard and left guard and center.
Yep.
Cole Strange is back in. That rookie looked good for a minute. Now he's not there. It's back to Ben Brown. And then Barthy says, well, there's always the last day of cuts from around the league. Well, that means you have no answer. So,
they cut Andrews.
My God.
They cut David Andrews, and they don't have a center.
I'm just so when we get into the regular season, are guys going to emerge, and we're going to have they are so overdue for diamonds in the rough. You pick out a guy from the middle of the pack, and what happened in 2001. You want to go back to that? They cast a wide net. Bill brought in all of his old familiar guys from the Jets or the Browns, and he just brought in a slew of mid-level free agents in 2001, and well over half of them got a hit. And out of nowhere, you have Vrabel, and you have Mike Compton, and you have back to like Otis Smith and Anthony Pleasant and Roman Pfeiffer and blah, blah, blah. And so if this happens here, okay, yes, but don't you think they're so overdue?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
For that?
They've whiffed on so many of those, it isn't even funny.
And the money. So, it just, something doesn't add up. And what I know what doesn't add up, the cap is complete trash. And the current Patriots are a great example of it. They've spent a lot of money. They spent a huge amount of money last offseason. This offseason, they're still $60 million under the cap. And next year, they're tight up against it. And they've got a bunch of bad contracts. You look at Kyle Duggar. Not worth the money. They're trying to desperately get rid of it. They won't be able to. Ramondre Stevenson, waste. Why'd you sign him? Barmore hasn't been worth the money yet. Owenu hasn't been worth the money yet. So they've got all these bad contracts, but they've got a ton of cap space, yet they've also spent through the nose. And they still have no real talent around their quarterback.
I know.
So how is that, all that just doesn't kind of add up to me. It's still all over the place. How is it possible to have spent a record amount of money, still have the most cap space in the league, still have these massive holes on your team, mostly on offense, yet still have a handful of bad contracts on the team that you can't get rid of if you tried?
You can do that by spending bad money.
It's
or badly spending money.
So the spending thing, Greg Bedard put in his email yesterday. We were going to argue about it, but that would have taken up the whole show, and I was more interested in his commentary on Drake May, so we didn't even go there. Because when we go here with me, it tends to dominate, and I honestly don't want it to dominate. I just want to get it off my chest, and you can weigh in, and we can move on. But Greg was going to push back on the spending. He was going to say, why do you keep saying the Patriots haven't spent any money, Felger? They spent $325 million in cash just on personnel this offseason, to say nothing about paying off the old coaching staff, hiring a new coach and staff, plus the personnel analytics additions they've made, and the new practice facility. The Crafts have easily spent over $400 million in cash this year, he would have said.
Okay, does he mean the coming new practice facility?
Correct. Yeah. The soccer. Which
is more about the World Cup than anything else.
Oh, is it? They're going to use it for the soccer too? I didn't. Oh, I thought that was just the No, it's for the soccer.
Oh.
The Crafts have easily spent over $400 million in cash this year. He says, of course, the Crafts are going to expect that to be offset in the next couple of years.
Yep.
So it's they have all this cap space, but they're not going to spend it, or they're going to fudge it because they've spent all this money to begin with on Kyle Duggar, Michael Owenu, Ramondre Stevenson, and a new Patriots practice facility. Never mind the Schmenzer. So that's all coming out of your end, the fans' end, eventually. But it's like, okay, so they've spent money. I mean, all right, I guess I'll give it to you. But here, I just want to put a pin in this because when I always say that, well, listen, when a lot of people who like to defend the Crafts or any owner will say, well, listen, what they spend on the building doesn't impact the players. What they spend on the coaching staff doesn't impact the players. And I always say, no, sir. The money goes back to the same two pockets. It's all included. And don't let any owner get away with that. Whatever you spend on your soccer team comes out of somewhere. And it's usually your baseball team if you're John Henry. And whatever useless giant schmenzer that you build in the end zone comes out of somewhere. And so whatever you spend on that, something else is not getting spent on. It goes back to the same two pockets. Don't let them get away with that. And Greg, thank you for confirming. So Bedard has confirmed that what they spend on the practice facility is going to impact what they spend on players. Thank you, Greg. I always knew it, but it's obvious based on who he's talking to.
Yep. I mean, it goes back to those video boards too, right?
So listen, you got a nice scoreboard out there, folks.
Did he mention the Brady statue? That couldn't have been cheap.
You don't have a first or second receiver, but you have a giant useless schmenzer, a big scoreboard, and now a bronze statue that looks nothing like your former quarterback.
Well, I mean, facially it does, but he's got a small head.
But all that money's coming from somewhere, and it's the same two pockets. So when you wonder if they're not spending on the players, just look up at the scoreboard, and I think you'll know where that money went. Just like you could look over to Liverpool and see a new center back and wonder why you couldn't keep Rafi Devers or Mookie Betts. The center backs got to get paid somehow.
Liverpool's loaded.
Thank you, Greg, for confirming what we all know and should know. It all comes from the same place. What they spend on a practice facility impacts what they spend on players. Thank you. And whoever was talking to Greg on that one, thank you, John. I mean, whoever. You've confirmed what I've always known. How come they haven't paid for a left tackle in like 10? Look at the big phallic symbol in the north end zone that's completely useless. You can ring a bell up there. For that, you don't have any talent.
I wonder what the statue of Brady cost. I do. I wonder.
A left guard.
Maybe. Yeah, I do. I wonder. It's probably the center, actually. But go ahead.
So I'm slightly exaggerating, but it all goes back to the same spot. It's just good to have it confirmed that what they spend off the field impacts what they spend on the field. I always knew it, but now I have confirmation from the crowd or whoever is talking to Greg. Greg wrote that, Mike, any bitching you do about what the Patriots have or haven't done to your satisfaction, I'm going to counter it with the Commanders last year. Yes, they had Terry McLaurin, but their free agency and roster move was completely mid. Their free agency roster moves were completely mid-tier.
Yeah, right.
That's a
mid-market.
newfangled term, especially on offense. He says on the offensive line, the Commanders started a third-round rookie left tackle, who they just moved to guard, by the way. Free agent additions, Nick Allegretti, who I think was from the Chiefs, if I'm not mistaken, off the street. Center Tyler Badass, great name. I think he was with the Cowboys at one point. Right tackle Andrew Wiley were all brought in during free agency, and they stink. He says the Patriots versions are Bradbury and Moses. Their right guard, Kasimi, also low-key stinks. Owenu is better. Didn't play that way last year, though. Bottom line, Greg says, I would make the argument that the Patriots are much better off on the line going into this season than the Commanders were going into last offseason.
Okay.
When you just scouted all the players and the talent up front, the Pats have more talent going into this year than the Commanders had going into last year. He says also on the Commanders, notice they didn't make many big moves. Like this year, Jeremy Tunsil and Deebo Samuel.
Laremy Tunsil.
Laremy Tunsil, sorry. They didn't make any big moves on offense until this offseason after the quarterback proved himself. He says, if I'm the Pats, I'm not doing anything until May proves himself, which would be next offseason at the earliest. Josh Allen didn't get Steph Diggs until his third season. What if May gets hurt? What if he continues to make more turnovers than a bakery? Then you will have, and I'm going to fill in the blank, will have wasted money spending this offseason. So that's the defense on the Patriots not spending. They've spent, just not on anything that really practically is going to help their young quarterback. And some of it was off the field that we're not really talking about and shouldn't be a factor, but it does. It obviously factors in. just sort of wrap all this up, and I would have thought that the roster would have been better by now, or I would have looked at more guys and say, he's emerging, they're emerging. But if you get into the regular season, and Drake May, like Jaden Daniels did, between the coaching and the quarterbacking, you elevate what on paper is a bad offensive line, fine. I'm all for it. In fact, that's what's going to happen. The coaching and the quarterback play is going to have to elevate what we think that offensive line is. And if it happens, great. They're due for it. They are overdue to pull diamonds from the rough, get players you weren't expecting to emerge, and to be greater than the sum of the parts. They're overdue for it. But at this point, that's what I'm left with, that the parts aren't all that great.
So the other thing is the part that he said about May, like that the Commanders did not spend until the quarterback proved himself. That concerns me if that's what the Patriots are doing. So you're telling me that Drake May has to prove himself before he gets an offensive line?
This wasn't part of the calculus. I always heard when you were the star rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, you're allowed to fill out the roster around him, and it's the cheat code. I didn't hear the addendum of, we first have to make sure that he's the guy and he has to prove himself. I didn't know that was the case.
And how's he supposed to prove himself if he has no O-line?
How's he supposed to prove himself throwing to Kayshon Boutte and having Bradbury snap him the ball? So kind of hard to prove yourself, don't you think?
Did Buffalo wait for Josh Allen to prove himself before they got him Stephon Diggs?
They got Diggs after year 2. They made the playoffs, but he wasn't good in year 2.
No, he wasn't good in year 2. Steph Diggs helped them get to that next level. Like that one to me is, if that's what they're thinking, that's wrong.